quite a few methods I would like to see them change. The Moss Rock and the Leaf Stone, and the Ice Rock and the Ice Stone should be interchangeable. The affection that you get from Pokemon Amie or Pokemon Refresh should just be the same stat as friendship. That's right, they changed it for me. Someone at Game Freak or at the Pokemon Company saw that video, realized what a genius I am, and made those changes just for me. Thank you, random stranger. Now, they didn't do all of the changes that I talked about in that video, but I'm sure they're working on it. No, there's no chance that it was all a coincidence.
Okay.
Pokemon Sword and Shield changed a lot of things, big and small, from the cut to the Pokedex to differentiating between technical machines and technical records, which, by the way, also solves an issue that I mentioned in that video. But the most interesting change was to the fossil Pokemon, and they were interesting on multiple levels. We still have 4 fossil Pokemon, but this time they are 4 different combinations of parts from 4 different fossilized creatures. We have the Fossilized Drake, which is a dinosaur of some kind, probably a Stegosaurus kind of thing, judging by the plates on the back, but maybe also more of a theropod. We have the Fossilized Bird, which is not really a bird in our modern conception of it, but it is something of a transitional creature between the theropod dinosaurs and the modern birds. We have the Fossilized Dino, which is ironically definitely not a dinosaur. It is a marine reptile, probably an ichthyosaur, but maybe a plesiosaur. And we have the Fossilized Fish, which is definitely a placoderm, an armored fish, probably Dunkleosteus. Hey, just popping in real quick to point out something that I noticed while I was gathering the images that we used in this video, because it looks to me like the Fossilized Drake and the Fossilized Fish sprites might have actually been switched. Because if you look at it, the Fossilized Drake really looks like the head of the fossilized fish, whereas the fossilized fish doesn't really look like anything in particular. So I don't really know if that was on purpose or not, but it's definitely strange. And I also noticed that in Japanese, the fossilized dino is actually called specifically the fossilized plesiosaur. So at least that mistake of calling it a dinosaur was only in the localization. Everything about these Pokemon seems to reference the early days of paleontology. For example, their designs reference bad reconstructions of dinosaur skeletons. I think the most famous example was Iguanodon, whose thumb bone was originally interpreted as a nose horn. And I know that these Pokemon are all freaks of nature, but I really love their designs because they really played up that aspect. Dracozolt is the one that I find the least interesting because even if the fossilized Drake is a stegosaurid, so that would be a quadruped, all of the parts are still working basically the way they normally would, whereas all of the other ones have some weird misinterpretation. Arcozolt is a land creature even though its legs are clearly fins. Arctovish has the head on the wrong way, and Dracovish has the head on the tip of the tail, which to me is the most perplexing one. Like, how do you mistake this for a neck? Their Pokedex entries also reflect early theories of how dinosaurs went extinct. An article on National Geographic says that early ideas included the concept that dinosaurs put too much of their bodily energy into growing big and spiky, and this made them incapable of adapting. Slipped discs, out-of-control hormones, low sex drives, disease, cataracts, and even just plain dino stupidity were all implicated. And that's exactly what we see in the Pokedex. Dracozolt went extinct because it ate too much. Arcozolt went extinct because it had a hard time walking and moved too slowly. Dracovish went extinct because it overhunted its prey and it could only breathe underwater. And Arctovish went extinct because it had trouble eating and breathing. And I just love that they went that far with their references. But the best part is that everything the Pokedex says about these Pokemon is BS, which plays really well into some of my old theories. If you've been watching me for a while, you know the Pokedex lies. You can't trust anything you read in there. But it's not often that you come across something and know so easily that it's gotta be fake. As long as we realize that these Pokemon never existed until Careless Carolus Frankensteined these abominations to life. And evidence of that is so common, this isn't even really a theory, it's just fact. First, just look at them. These things are so miserable, they don't even want to be alive. Second, these Pokemon are made from independent fossils. A fossilized fish, for example, can be used to make either Arctovish or Dracovish. And because there is no restriction on which bottom half you're going to combine with a specific fossilized fish or any other combination of fossils, we know that these Pokemon were never a single creature to begin with. The pieces have no relation to each other. Third, these are the only fossil Pokemon to be genderless and in the undiscovered egg group, which makes them the only fossil Pokemon that can't breed. Most fossil Pokemon can breed, and not just with Ditto, but with any compatible Pokemon from their egg groups. An Aerodactyl can breed with a Togekiss. And yes, that is another completely random combination of Pokemon. Not a reference to anything in the anime. Trust me. But the Galar fossils can't breed at all, not even with Ditto, which to me says that they must be sterile, which does make sense. Not all Pokemon that are genderless or are in the undiscovered egg group are necessarily sterile. There's many Pokemon that are genderless but can still breed with Ditto, and there's many Pokemon in the undiscovered egg group that are just so rare there's a good chance we've just never seen them breed. But in this case, I do think that they are sterile because they are made from spare parts. So with all that, it's pretty obvious that these Pokemon never existed, which means that these Pokédex entries, which were probably written by Kara Liss, are completely made up. Made up. Or at least based on completely faulty evidence. And that throws the credibility of the entire Pokédex into question, because if Professor Magnolia, or whoever manages Pokédex data in the Galar region, which actually is probably Chairman Rose, or at least someone in Macrocosmos, they are everywhere. If they let these entries through, what didn't they let in? Was there any review process for Pokédex entries at all? By the way, the Galar fossils are also the only fossil Pokemon that don't have the rock type, but I haven't yet figured out how that plays into the bigger picture. But there's still more that we can milk from these Pokemon, because despite all that, they are still clearly Pokemon. They use the same kinds of moves, they are susceptible to the same poisons, they're just man-made Pokemon. Which supports my idea that the Pokemon genome is incredibly adaptable and is able to be molded rather easily into a variety of viable life forms. Actually, these fossil Pokemon are a lot like Type Null and Silvally. Type Null was also made from parts of other Pokemon. It is also genderless and also in the undiscovered egg group. But Ditto can still transform into all of these Pokemon. And Ditto obviously wouldn't have the DNA of Dracovish and Arctozolt and Arctovish and Dracozolt, I hope I got all of them, and Type Null and Silvally, because they are not natural creatures. But they are made from natural parts. So if Ditto has the DNA of those original Pokemon, it might still be able to do a partial transform. Now, partial transform is something that we touched on briefly when we talked about the Ditto 5, but I think that's the only way that Ditto could transform into these kinds of Pokemon. Although, now that I think about it, Ditto does also transform into Pokemon like Genesect and Porygon that are partially or completely artificial. So if Ditto's transform is based on genetics like I think it is, how does Ditto transform into artificial Pokemon? I don't know. Throw that one into the pile with the Ditto 5. I have no idea. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Dracovish and the other fossil Pokemon of the Galar region. If you had any doubts that the Pokédex is unreliable, I hope this video ruined it for you. But I'm eager to hear what you thought of these Pokemon, their designs, their inspirations, their implications for world building, even their competitive prowess if you want to talk about that, even though I'm no expert in that regard. Make sure to let me know in the comments. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching, make sure to check the cards or the Umbreon Libris Essentials playlist for some recommendations of what else to watch, and make sure to subscribe for more Pokemon videos every week. I'm Umbreon Libris, and I'll see you in the next chapter.